Well, it just goes directly to the fact that the Democratic Party's marketers, they are experts at marketing, and that's why we hear them calling this a COVID relief bill, when in fact it is just a great big spending bill, Rob. This is full of more pork and wasteful spending than anything. It is historic. It's full of more wasteful spending than anything that has ever been passed in history. As a matter of fact, the last time I saw this much pork, I was at a luau in Hawaii, and it had an apple in its mouth. And it is really bad. We have $1 trillion worth of relief funding that is still available right now in Washington from the previous bills, including $59 billion that would go for education spending and $280 billion that would go for the PPP program that we know was so successful. Most of the spending that's contained within this bill won't even take place for many years out, but they try to claim that it's an emergency, that it gets passed now.
I don't know why you'd leave Montana, Congressman. Montana's maybe the most beautiful state in the country, but you had us laughing here in the studio with that. I thought this was interesting, and I think you tweeted this out, but the COVID relief debacle of a bill is so big, it could cover the entire Montana budget for the next 380 years, bringing us all the way to the year 2400. Just totally ridiculous.
380 years, Rob. That's 100 years longer than we've been a nation, and 3 times as long as Montana has even been a state, and we could live tax-free. Tax-free. 380 years. Unbelievable.
When I saw the year 2400 written down, I wasn't even sure how to say it. But that's how big this bill is.
People can't conceive how much money this is. I had a small group of Christian school members that came into Washington yesterday to visit me on the Capitol. Unfortunately, they weren't allowed to come into my office because of Fort Pelosi being set up around our offices and the Capitol itself with 8-foot unscalable fences and razor wire. But I was able to meet with these students off-site and have this discussion with them. This is a loan against their children, not just against them as 16, 17, 18-year-olds, but against their children and possibly their grandchildren. Well, it is shameful, the spending that is taking place.
Exactly. It means higher interest rates. There's so much attached to this bill that's negative. And I get why the American people would be excited about this. If you earn under $75,000 a year, you're going to get a check, a one-time check of $1,400. And that's great. You can go out and pay some bills, but it's a one-time check. My question, what do we do 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now? I know you're really passionate.
There's more money being spent on a subway system in Nancy Pelosi's backyard than there is on education.
Yeah, and a bridge to nowhere in New York.
Most of this spending is being spread out over the next several years. We've got $350 billion in there that's being spent on blue state bailouts. This is nothing more than a payback to national Democrat support.
I know you're passionate about gun legislation. I bring this up because on Tuesday, the House just started debating on expanding strict, really strict, historically strict background checks on firearms. Your thoughts?
We have 2 pieces of legislation that the Democrats are going to try and push through this week. We've got H.R. 8 and H.R. 1446. H.R. 8 basically is going to make it a crime for you to lend a gun to your neighbor. I mean, out in Montana, if you want to lend a gun to your neighbor because his cattle are being harassed by coyotes, or a buddy because he's going on an elk hunting trip, you literally could be in prison for 1 year and have a $100,000 fine. And then the background checks, basically what 1446 is going to do is make it incumbent upon the firearms purchaser, the citizen of the United States, to prove that they should be able to own a firearm. This is completely contrary to what the people in Montana believe, and certainly contrary to the Second Amendment, which clearly states that your rights shall not be infringed.
That's why we have a Constitution.
We're going to push back against this as hard as we possibly can.
Yeah, and I just hope that filibuster remains. Democrats were fine with it, by the way, when they were in the minority. Your state, Montana, again, you've got the largest border to our north of any state in the U.S. along the Montana-Canadian border. You've got to go back to like Prohibition for the last time we had any kind of crisis along our northern border. Why do you think the Biden administration, particularly yesterday, is so apprehensive about calling this a crisis? Not that that word really matters, but we've got an HHS secretary who's asking colleagues in his office to come down and volunteer to help the Border Patrol. That is unusual.
It is. I went to the Arizona-Mexican border about just over a month ago, and they already knew that this problem was starting to swell up and we could see it coming our way. And the Customs Patrol, Border Patrol, Customs agents, local law enforcement, local farmers and ranchers, they all knew that this was on the way. Several caravans were heading towards us, and these people are coming towards us because they are incentivized. They're incentivized because of this administration, and they're incentivized because of sanctuary cities. I brought several pieces of legislation forward to try and curb this flood of humanity. This is a problem not only for our economy and local businesses, but this is a major problem for the people that are traveling this way. The inhumane treatment that they receive as they travel north to our border is frightening.
Yeah.
These people are abused sexually, they're abused physically, they're forced into servitude once they get into the United States to pay back the debt that they accumulated in order to pay to get transferred across the border illegally into our country. It is really, really tragic. But the same week that they're trying to pass these amnesty bills and gun control bills, they